Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to be making a tutorial on how to cut and sew this monostrap off-shoulder gown. So if this is something that interests you, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. So I folded my fabric into four using my hip measurement, which is the largest part of my body measurement. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and mark out my zipper allowance. So once I mark it out, I'll form a straight line on it, trim off the excesses and just fold in the zipper allowance. So I've gone ahead to trim off the self edge at the upper part because I don't want self edge to show. So I just adjusted my fabric so it will be easy for me. So the part facing me is the center front and the center back that has the zipper allowance. So now I'm going to go ahead now to mark 1 inch from the beginning of the fabric. This 1 inch we are marking out is going to denote our starting point. So from that starting point, I'm going to go ahead and mark out my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. Then I'll come down by 1 inch. Then on my neck, on my shoulder line again, I'm going to insert my neck width of 4 inches, and from there I'll connect to that 1 inch that I came down, which is going to serve as the shoulder slope. So after marking out the shoulder slope, I'm going to go ahead now and start inserting my body measurement. So I will insert my bust point, which is 11.5 inches, placing my tape on that starting point. Then I'll mark 10 inches, which is my armhole. Then I'm going to go ahead and mark 18 inches, which is my waistline, and 28 inches, which is my hip line. So the length of this fabric is enough for me, so that's the length I'm going to be using for this tutorial. So I'm just going to form a straight line on each of these points that I marked out. So after forming that straight line, I'll go ahead now and connect that shoulder slope down to my chest line, which is going to indicate the line where we are going to connect, where we are going to form our armhole. So on that line, I'm going to, on my chest line, I'm going to go ahead and mark as my bust point. Then on the armhole line, I will look for the midpoint, then go in by half an inch. Then I'm going to connect that point to the bust point, to the chest line, using my armhole curve. So guys, after marking my armhole curve, I'm just going to go ahead and start marking out my darts. To mark out my darts, I'll divide my nipple to nipple measurements by 2. Nipple to nipple measurements is 8 inches divided by 2, that's 4 inches. So I'm going to mark 4 inches on the bust point, on the waistline, and on the hip line. So after marking it, I'll connect it in a straight line. Then I'll go to the waistline and go out on both sides by half an inch, go to the bust point, go down by 1 inch. On the hip line, I'll come up by 1 inch. Then I'm going to connect those points together the way I'm connecting it now to form my dart legs. So after forming my dart legs, I'm going to go ahead now to insert my basic bodice measurement. So on the chest line, I've already marked out my bust circumference, so I'm going to add 1.5 inch seam allowance to it. So on the waistline, I'm marking out my waist circumference measurement. Then I had 1 inch for the darts that we are going to take in, and 1.5 for seam allowance. So on the hip line, I'm going to insert my hip circumference and the 1.5 inch seam allowance. So after marking all that, I'm going to take my curve rule and use it to connect those points together. So our bodice pattern is ready. After connecting it together, I'll go to the neckline to work on my neckline. So the neckline, I've already formed a neck width of 4 inches. So I don't want the neckline to be too low, so I'm going to go down by 4.5 inches, which is going to be my neckline for the neck depth. So the neckline I'm using is 4 inches by 4.5 inches. So after marking my neckline, I'll go to the shoulder slope and add half an inch allowance, which I'm going to use to join the front panel to the back panel. So I'll form a straight line there. Then I'm going to cut out my pattern. So this is what I have after cutting my pattern. So the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the wrong side of this pattern. So after marking the wrong side, I'm going to unpin the front panel from the back panel, so I will separate them. So once I separate it, I'll place both on each other. I will lay the back panel first on the table and place the front panel on it, making sure the wrong sides are facing each other. So I'll pick the side I'm going to go ahead to mark my off shoulder, and I've already picked one side, so I've removed the back panel for the other side. So after picking that side, I'm just going to go ahead and trace out a measurement from the midpoint of the neckline, the way I'm just tracing it out like this. There's no specific measurements that I'm using, so I'm just tracing it out the way I want it to be. So after tracing it out, I'm going to go ahead to cut it. But before you cut it, make sure that the front and the back panel are aligning properly, because if they are not aligning properly, you are going to make a mistake. So to avoid any mistakes, you should make sure they are aligning properly. So after cutting it, this is what I have. So I'm going to go ahead now and just cut out my lining for these pieces. So guys, I want to cut out the sleeve now. So I'm going to use my armhole measurement multiplied by 2. My armhole is 18 inches, so I'm going to multiply it by 2. That is 36 inches. So I'm cutting it on fold, so I'm marking out 18 inches width. So the length I'm using is 15.5, because I want my sleeve length to be 14 inches, but I'm going to add 1 inch for elastic casing because we are making a puff sleeve, and I'm going to add half an inch that we are going to use to join it to the armhole. So at that end, I'm going to mark 4 inches, which is my cap height. Then I'm just going to curve it from the beginning of the sleeve the way I'm curving it now to meet that 4 inches that I marked. So once it meets it, I will go ahead and cut it out. So this sleeve is for the side that has the shoulder, for the side that I have shoulder. So after doing that, I'm going to set it aside and go ahead and cut the side that is off shoulder. So I'm going to use the same measurement for it, but this time around I'm going to make 2 elastic casing. So I'm going to fold in 1 inch at the top part, because I will add elastic to the upper part and the lower part of the side that is off shoulder. So this, what I'm folding now, is the 1 inch for the elastic casing at the upper part. So after folding it the way I folded it now, I'll bring in my fabric, then I'll place it on it like this, making sure it's aligned. So where the armhole starts to where the armhole ends, I'm going to place it on it like this. So I'm trying to trace it out. So once I trace it out, I remove my bodice, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. So after cutting it out, this is what I have. So this right here is my sleeve. So now I'm gonna ahead to cut out the lining for the fabric. So I will go ahead now to join the neckline together, top stitch it, join the down side, turn it inside out, taking the dart, attach the zipper and all of that. So guys, I've gone ahead to join my lining to the main bodice. I've taken in the darts. So this is the front panel, and for the back panel as well, I've attached my zipper. I've taken in the darts as well. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to place both on each other, so making sure the right sides are facing each other. So after placing it on each other, I'm going to take it to my machine and join the shoulder, the part that has shoulders together. But when I want to join it together, I'm going to lift the I'll leave the lining of the back panel and use it to cover the front panel like this. So when I cover it, there will be two linings facing each other and two fabric facing each other. So after doing it like that, I'll go ahead and sew it. So guys, after sewing it, this is what I have, and because of the method we use is looking so neat like this. So the next thing is to work on the sleeves. So guys, remember I said for the part that have off shoulder, we are going to have like two elastic casing. So I'm going to go ahead now and fold the elastic casing of the upper part like this, 1 inch. I'll fold it in like this, then I will sew it down. Then I will go to the down part as well, folding the elastic casing as well with 1 inch and sew it down. So for the second sleeve, I'm going to fold it in as well and do the same. Just run a loose stitch round this armhole line because I'm going to be pulling it to form my gathers. So guys, I've gone ahead to do all that to this, and I've gone ahead to sew the gathers and stitches down. So now I'm going to cut my elastic. So for the length, for the end of the sleeve, I'm going to be using 14 inches as my round sleeve. So I will measure out 14 inches. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces for the 2 sleeves. So after cutting that out, for the upper part of the parts that have off shoulder, I'm going to be using half of my shoulder measurements. My shoulder is 16 inches, half of it is 8 inches. So that's what I've cut out now. So I'm going to insert that into my safety pin and start inserting it into the elastic casing of the shoulder. So once it goes in, I'm going to pin it down so it will not go all through, and just run it through. So guys, I've done that for both the upper part and the lower part of this sleeve, and I've done that for the lower part of the other sleeve as well. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and start pulling the gathers of the other sleeve. So when I'm pulling the gathers, guys, make sure that you are doing it gently so it will not cut, because if it's cut, you are going to go ahead and start all over again. So guys, after pulling the gathers, I'll bring my main bodice. So I'm going to measure from the end of the armhole, of one side of the armhole, to the midpoint of the armhole. So whatever I get there, I will measure it on the armhole part of my sleeve as well. So I will measure it till I get to the midpoint I've already notched. So after measuring it, I'm going to be pulling it out so that it will match. So once it's matched, I'm going to lay it on each other like this, pin the midpoint, and just sew it down like that on the sleeve that has the shoulder. So for the sleeve that does not have the shoulder, I will take the armhole of that sleeve, and I'm just going to place it right side facing each other on the armhole of the basic bodice. So this is it. I'll sew it down the way I've placed it on each other like this. After that, I'll do the same for the other sleeve as well. So I'll go ahead to my machine now and do that for both sides of the sleeves. So guys, this is what I have after joining the sleeve to the bodice. This is for the part that has the shoulder, and this right here is for the part that does not have the shoulder, the off shoulder part. So after doing that, I will lay the front panel on the back panel and make sure I align it properly. So once I align it, I'll take it to my machine and use 1 inch to sew it down. Remember, we left 1.5 inches, but we have used half an inch to turn it inside. So I'm going to join it together on both sides with 1 inch seam allowance. Then I'll come back and show you guys the final look of our gown. So guys, this is the final look of our off-shoulder monostrap gown. So like this video please, and comment in the comment section if you learned a thing or two in this video. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.